Okay, so I'm going to continue working on this bracelet that I started a little while ago, and the next step in making this is the top of this has a curve, so I'm going to mark the curve on both of these ends, on all four ends actually, and then I'm going to start laying it out. Now, one thing is on this side, there needs to be a little bit of a tiny flat spot along this edge, and that's because I'm putting a curve on the inside of the bracelet just to make it more comfortable. So this is going to let me keep the curve the same. And so I'm going to do both halves of the bangle. Now this will be hinged, so I have to do it in two parts and put it together later. And like I said, this is just for laying out the curve that I'm going to put on it. So we know, and I'm just going to put it across this end so you can see kind of what I'm doing. So now, if this here line is the end, this whole thing is going to have curve kind of like that, and kind of like this, so that the top is curved, and the other side will obviously be the same because the curve is going to continue along the whole piece. So I'm going from that line and curving the top. Now I'm not going to do it with a scriber. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a fairly rough file, and I'm going to start and double check that everything is square. It's very important at this stage that everything is perpendicular and parallel to itself. And you can see there's just a little bit of extra material here on that side. And a little bit more here. This is going to determine the top of the curve. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the corner off, the edge off of it, and I'm watching that facet to make sure it's the same width the entire distance. And if that facet is the same width, it increases the chance that I'm going to keep it nice and even. And I can check this. I know that it has to go more than that. So now that I've got one pass done, I'm going to do a second pass. I'm following the curve as I come around the piece. Here where it's flat, I can file it flat. And I'm just going to keep going here. I will need to get my file card out. Keep this file clean as I go. And so we'll kind of do it in stages. Oops, let me grab my file card and just clean the file here. And then I do the other side, same angle, same amount of cut. So when I say amount of cut, I'm looking at the width here, which is just over 3 millimeters. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I can hear how well the file's cutting as I file this piece of wax. If I can hear that it's not cutting very well, it means that there's too much wax. So this wax is filling the tooth of the file, meaning I need to use the file card on it. So you can see how I've started to get a little bit of the edge down. I've got further to go, and that's fine. If I want, I can do this just on the edge to match my curve, and then I'll do the same thing on the other side. Trying not to touch my bench peg with the wax because the wood will put gouges in it. So that's the end form that I'm going for right there. The side's got to come down just a bit. Now that I know basically what that's going to look like, I can continue that along. Taking a little off the edge every time, or a little more off the edge. I basically want this edge to come right down to that line. And then curve it along. For this video, because it's going to take a little while for me to do this, I'm only going to work on one side, but I'm going to do exactly the same thing on the other side of this bangle. Getting this even is really the hardest part of this. What I should make is a bench cover, basically a leather bench shield. I'm going to match this end curve up to my drawing here. And that just helps me have a target. There we go. And I'm watching that layout line as I go to make sure that this curve does not go beyond that layout line. This big wide area is a little bit harder to do because it's flat. I guess it's arguable which is harder. So I'm just going to keep going. I got lots of material here to remove. Like that. I'm finding it difficult to hold on to it, but now I want this curve to come all the way up to the top, but I'll get that in a moment. Here we go. Oops. So that's basically the beginning of it. Now I'm going to go down to a finer file and just bring it a little bit tighter to the end product here. Just like that. Finer file does fill up with wax significantly more. Now, before I move on to doing the interior curvature, I'm just going to take a little graver and I'm going to start smoothing out my lines here. And this is all before, I've got texture to put on this still. It's got grooves. So before the grooves get put in, I do want this nice and smooth all the way. And this removes very little material, but it covers the angle pretty well. So when I file, I create a bunch of facets. This is just going to take some of those facets off. And this edge here, all the way. I keep moving it so that I can see the light shining off the top surface, and that just helps me see the curvature better. So assuming that that is exactly what I want, and it's pretty close, I'm going to then put a little curvature on the inside. I'm going to do that with a rotary file. And I'm going right up to that layout line that I put in before. Now this bangle is not my design. It's to match one that the customer already has. So I'm going to, as a rule, I don't copy things. I will get it close, but, and this will be in silver when it's done, and this will be all solid as well. So the other one that she has in gold is hollow, which kind of makes sense because it's gold. There we go. Now before I move on to the next stage, I'm going to scrape that smooth. Almost dropped it. Take the inside curve off just a little bit. And that's just going to give the whole thing a little bit more roundness, making it more comfortable on her wrist. Kind of important. Same thing on the other side. So as I said, I'm going to do the other side in off camera. So now I know that there's a curvature that starts here and works its way over, and I have measured it. It's about 1/2 inch. And I don't have to be exact, but it starts 1/2 inch on this side and ends 1/2 inch on this side. So I know that there needs to be a line that goes from here all the way over to here. And so I'm just going to put my saw blade down and make sure that I can see this mark and this mark. And then I'm going to put a little tiny cut right there. Follow that over. Same thing on this side. So that's my first layout line for this. And I'm going to actually deepen it just a little bit here. So for this design, start off by deepening it, and then I know that this little rib is roughly 4 millimeters. So I'm going to take my dividers, put it in there, and I'm going to use this to mark a parallel line. Along here, and as I come around this corner, it's probably going to slip off, but that's okay. Like that, and then continue on this side. Like that. So that's my first line. This whole thing is going to be curved, or sorry, is going to be have ribs on it. So then I'm going to take this guy here and mark a parallel one using the same center line I used before. Now, so that's the beginning. Now I'm going to, now that I have that, I'm going to take the edge of my file and I'm going to file a groove following that line all the way across, just like that. Now, I should, before I continue, use this line that I put to draw another parallel line, so that I have this go along. And I will have to eye the very end just a little bit, just because the dividers will slide off as I get to the edge. And we got to make sure that the left side doesn't slide out, so I can just do that. And then I'll do the same thing on this one. Now this one here, I do have to continue this, and this should continue to here, kind of like that. And this guy here, so I'm just going to use my graver to draw a parallel line there. Looks pretty good. Just like so. And then again, to make that an actual rib, I'm going to now cut using the corner of my file, cut a line parallel to that first one, just like that, and then I'll do the other side. Before I do the other side, I want to make sure that I have this layout line in place. If I file it before I put this layout line in, my lines aren't going to be as parallel. There we go. Finish this side here. Just like that. Now I can move on to the next one here. So this is going to be a series of these ridges going across it, and they're rounded. I'm just using my graver tip now to keep it nice and crisp and clean. And I'll do that all the way across. For now, I'm just going to do this middle section here. So I'm taking just a little edge off of it. So you can see how I will have nice concentric curved ribs all the way around, and I'll just do that whole thing all the way down here. So as I come to this edge, I'm going to use the graver for this, just because it's actually a little bit easier than filing. It's more likely I'm going to slip with a file. Now I don't want this curving all the way around the inside. So right at the edge here, I'm just going to stop it. And that's for comfort, right? We don't want too much. Now I do want to remove some material from this. I don't want it to be heavy, so I may have to hollow it out a little bit, but I'm going to talk to the customer first and make sure that's what she wants before I go ahead and do anything. You know, some people like really heavy pieces, right? So it's kind of up to her. There we go. So I'm just gonna work my way around this, try to get it nice and smooth and parallel and all that sort of stuff. So there it is. I will just keep working this until I've continued this little rib pattern all the way around with these parallel lines until there's no room left. And then I'll do the same thing with this side, and then they'll go together like this to make the bangle. Okay, that's it for today. Thanks for watching, guys.